In the quiet town of Yuba City, California, 5 young men shared a simple joy: basketball. Not the professional league or televised games, but their own team, the Gateway Gators, preparing for a regional tournament in Sacramento. They called themselves the Boys, and to their families, they were harmless, good-hearted, and inseparable. On February 24, 1978, they piled into Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego, headed to Chico State to watch a college game. It was meant to be a short trip. They promised to be back that night. Their uniforms were laid out for the next day, snacks packed, and alarm clocks set. But none of them returned. Jack Madruga, 30, was a dependable soul. A quiet man, formerly in the army, he took pride in his independence. His car, always spotless, was his sanctuary. Ted Weiher, 32, was cheerful and trusting, with a contagious laugh and childlike faith in the goodness of people. Bill Sterling, 29, devout and gentle, often visited hospitals to comfort patients he'd never met. Jack Hewitt, 24, was the youngest, timid, emotionally soft, but fiercely loyal. Gary Mathias, 25, stood apart. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, he had stabilized in recent years with medication. A U.S. Army veteran and a sharp mind among the group, Gary was both a protector and a puzzle. Together, they were a portrait of brotherhood. Despite their developmental challenges, they supported one another with unwavering trust. They were more than friends, they were a unit. That night, the Chico State game ended around 10 p.m. They were seen leaving, laughing and in good spirits. Then, nothing. By morning, panic set in. Parents called one another, hoping for confusion or a delay. But the silence was deafening. Ted's mother paced her living room. "He never stays out," she kept saying. "Not without calling." The game they'd eagerly awaited was just hours away, and yet they hadn't returned, hadn't phoned, hadn't been seen. When police were notified, the search began. Flyers were printed. Gas stations and diners were questioned. Days passed. Then a week. No leads. It was as if the night had swallowed them whole. No one could understand it. They had no reason to deviate. No interest in camping, no history of reckless behavior. Every detail of their lives suggested reliability, routine. They weren't the type to disappear. And yet, that's exactly what they had done. In a town where news rarely stretched beyond the county line, the mystery of the Yuba County Five quickly became something else, an ache, a shadow. The boys were gone. The question that hung in the air, heavier with each passing day, wasn't just where they had gone, but why. And then, 10 days later, a car was found. Abandoned. Silent. Deep in the Plumas National Forest, far from any logical route. That single discovery would unearth a chilling story so inexplicable it would come to be known as the Dyatlov Pass of America. The Mercury Montego was found on a desolate mountain road nearly 70 miles from Chico, completely out of the way, perched precariously at the snowline of the Plumas National Forest. There were no tracks leading to or from the vehicle, save for those quickly erased by snowfall. It wasn't stuck. The tires were fine. It had a quarter tank of gas. It could have turned back. But it didn't. Inside, investigators found fast food wrappers, basketball programs, and maps of California's highways. The keys were gone, and so were the boys. What they left behind made even less sense than where they'd gone. Despite freezing nighttime temperatures, the boys had left behind their jackets. Ted Weiher's neatly folded, fur-lined coat lay across the seat. Their chocolate bars, bought on the road, were uneaten. It was as if they had stepped out of the car expecting to return, or had been compelled to leave it behind suddenly. Jack Madruga's family couldn't make sense of it. Jack hated the cold and hated driving into unfamiliar terrain even more. He was meticulous about directions. The road they had taken, winding, narrow, and remote, was one Jack would have never voluntarily chosen. Ted's brother, distraught, asked the same question that echoed across the investigation. What were they doing up there? Rescue teams began scouring the area. Helicopters swept over thick forests, while ground searchers battled snowdrifts and steep terrain. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of distress. Just the eerie silence of the wilderness. Then, a strange detail emerged from a witness. A man reported seeing 5 figures and a woman with a baby at a local store near the forest in the early morning after the game. The claim was unverified and soon dismissed as unreliable, yet it added an odd layer to the puzzle. Had they met someone? Were they following someone? 10 days had passed, and there was no trace of the 5 men. For their families, the not knowing was unbearable. Each morning brought hope. Each evening, silence. Even Gary Mathias's military background provided no answers. His boots were gone, but his medications were left behind at home, essential prescriptions that he couldn't survive without for long. And still, the question deepened: why leave the car? Why brave the forest on foot, unprepared and ill-equipped? If they were scared, what were they running from? If they weren't, what led them so far from safety? Just as theories began to stagnate and the trail grew cold, spring approached. And with it, melting snow. What lay beneath would unravel the story even further, not toward understanding, but into a realm darker, colder, and infinitely more bizarre. The car was not the end. It was only the beginning of something far more disturbing. In early June, as the last of winter's grip melted from the mountains, a group of motorcyclists ventured into the Plumas National Forest. What they discovered would reignite the mystery, and deepen it beyond reason. Roughly 20 miles from where the Mercury Montego had been found, they stumbled upon an old Forest Service trailer, its door slightly ajar. Inside, sprawled on a makeshift bed covered in blankets, was the body of Ted Weiher. He was emaciated, nearly unrecognizable. His feet were frostbitten black. His beard had grown long, suggesting he had survived for weeks, perhaps over a month. On the nearby table were a pile of open cans, meat rations from a government locker, but hundreds more remained untouched in the storage room. The trailer had matches, books, even a propane tank for heat, none of it used. The frost had taken him, slowly, despite the resources around him. Strangely, Ted's shoes were missing. That single detail unraveled a flood of new questions. Just outside the trailer, a pair of lightweight forest boots were discovered, standard issue, size 11.5. Gary Mathias's size. But Gary himself was nowhere to be found. Not then. Not now. Not ever. A week later, searchers followed a faint trail leading from the trailer into the surrounding woods. There, they found the remains of Jack Hewitt, bones scattered by animals, his backbone beneath a manzanita bush. Closer to the car, but still miles away, lay the bodies of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling, partially consumed by the elements. Their deaths, like Hewitt's, were ruled as hypothermia. But what drove them that deep into the forest, on foot through snow? The forest had given back 4 lives, but it held tight to one. Gary Mathias vanished like a ghost. No footprints. No clothing. No sightings. The boots found near Ted's body were likely his, yet there was no trace of him nearby, no remains, no belongings, not even a shred of fabric. His disappearance wasn't just a gap in the story, it was the story. How could the man with the most survival experience, the only one with military training, be the one no one ever found? Theories erupted like wildfire. Some believed Gary wandered off in a final, desperate attempt to find help, succumbing to the elements beyond the search perimeter. Others were darker, whispers of Gary turning violent, of internal conflict, of something unspoken unfolding in the snow-covered woods. But those who knew him, especially his doctors, insisted that without his medication, Gary would have suffered a psychotic break, not plotted an escape. And yet, even that explanation offered no real answers. What happened in those mountains between February and June remains one of America's strangest unsolved cases. The media dubbed it the Dyatlov Pass of America. Even today, armchair detectives sift through every clue, mapping routes, debating decisions, hoping that one missing piece might explain why 5 men entered the woods and only silence came out. But the Plumas forest doesn't speak. It only echoes. Was it fear that drove them? Confusion? A wrong turn met with a cruel winter? Or did they see something that night, something that terrified them enough to abandon reason? There are no answers, only questions stacked upon questions, like the unopened cans left behind in the trailer. Possibilities untouched. Lifelines ignored. And one man, still out there, either lost, or hiding, or buried somewhere deep beneath the pine needles and time. The case of the Yuba County Five is not just a mystery. It is a wound, left open by the forest and the silence it refuses to break. Each snowfall buries the truth a little deeper. And if Gary Mathias is still alive, somewhere, he carries with him not just the weight of survival, but the final chapter of a story that refuses to end. Perhaps the forest remembers. But it has never chosen to tell.